Swarga, 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 Apavarga, Narakasve, Api Tulyar Dadarshina. Translation: Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees, are interested only in the service of the Lord.
So this is the concluding part of the chapter in which Lord Shiva is glorifying Chitraketu and uh, Vaishnavas in general. So the previous verse talks about the exalted state of the Vaishnavas. This verse answers the implicit question from Mother Parvati that why are the devotees so exalted? Right? And Lord Shiva says that because they are Narayana Para, because they are simply dependent on Lord Narayana. Other than that, they are not impacted by either reverses or by gains. So uh, uh, Lord Shiva uses the word Bhritya now. So Bhritya Nam, Prabhupada says that indicates that although Chitraketu provided one example of tolerance and excellence, all the devotees have taken shelter of the Lord as eternal servants are glorious. Right? So, whatever characteristics that Chitraketu is demonstrating is typical of the devotees of the Lord, and the root cause is that they're fully satisfied in the shelter of the Supreme Lord. Okay, next verse.
1 second. 29. Dehinam deha samyogat dvandva द्वन्द्वानि ईश्वरलीलया सुखं दुःखं मृतिर्जन्म मृतिः जन्म शापः अनुग्रहः एव च. Translation: Because of the actions of the Supreme Lord's external energy, the living entities are conditioned in contact with material bodies. The dualities of happiness and distress, birth and death, curses and favors are natural byproducts of this contact in the material world.
So, this is the flip situation that those who are not able to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, those who are not devotees, they're constantly they are wrestling with the dualities of happiness and distress, birth and death, curses and favors, which are all a byproduct of the material world. So Lord Shiva is famous for his affection to Parvati Devi, right? In the amongst exalted personalities, we see that there are many husband-wife couples, right? There's Radha Krishna, but then Krishna is mostly absent in Srimati Radharani's life. There is Lakshmi Narayan, and Lakshmi Devi is at the feet of the Lord, serving him in the mode of Aishwarya. And Lord Narayan, he often goes on record saying that his devotees are dearer to him than the goddess of fortune. Right? So, but amongst all the husband-wife couples, Gauri Shankar are the famous in terms of marital bliss. That Parvati Devi is completely devoted to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is very, very affectionate to Parvati Devi. So, one form of that affection is these valuable instructions that Lord Shiva gives to Parvati Devi. Right? So, in the fourth canto, we see him instructing her in the context of Daksha. Then, in the eighth canto, we will see that he will be instructing her in terms of the drinking of the halal poison. Then in the 11th canto, he will again instruct her about the glories of Markandeya Rishi. In the Padma Puran, there is a series of conversations between Lord Shiva and Parvati, which are which are encapsulated in Mahatmya. Like the Gita Mahatmya, which comes in the introduction of the Gita, is actually a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati Devi. According to some acharyas, the Pancharatras. So even though they are considered to be Narad, but according to some acharyas, they were actually instructions given by Lord Shiva to Parvati Devi, and Narad was also present over there. So he benefited from those instructions. So here he makes this point that if one does not surrender to Narayan, he ends up in the position of being controlled by Maya. Right. So Ishvara Leelaya. So by Maya, who receives the capacity through the playful glance of the of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that how Durga Devi is extremely powerful, right? And but she is dependent on Krishna. And those who are not Narayan Para, those who are not pure devotees, automatically come under the control of Maya. But those who are under the control of Lord Narayan, Maya Devi has nothing to do with them. Okay, next verse.
अविवेकः कृतः पुंसो हि अर्धभेदा इवात्मनि गुणदोषविकल्पश्च विद्येव सजीवत्कृता. Translation: as one mistakenly considers a flower garland to be a snake, or experiences happiness and distress in a dream, so in the material world, by a lack of careful consideration, we differentiate between happiness and distress, considering one good and the other bad.
So Lord Shiva continues to expand on the nature of the material world, that essentially it is temporary and unreal. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport makes the point that because of this, one must perform bhakti. Right? So, Prabhupada elaborates on the two analogies that are given over here. One is between the flower garland and the snake. So he says that Prabodhanand Saraswati says, Vishwam Purna Sukhyati. That even in this material world, everyone in this material world is distressed by miserable condition, right? But then later on he says the world is full of happiness. So how can one reconcile this two? Yad karunya kataksha vaibhatvam tad gauram evastumaha. That a devotee must accept the distress of the material world as happiness only due to the causeless mercy of Mahaprabhu. Right. So Prabhupada makes this point, quoting Prabhupada Saraswati, that all the miseries in the material world can be converted to happiness simply by taking shelter of the of Lord Narayan. And then he speaks about another analogy that in the dreams we sometimes enjoy eating sweet rice, and sometimes we suffer as if our beloved family members have died. Because the same mind and body exist in the same material world of duality, when we are awake, the so-called happiness and distress of this world are no better than the false, superficial happiness of the dreams. Okay, next verse, 31.
वासुदेवे भगवती भक्तिं उद्वतां नृणां ज्ञानवैराग्य वीर्याणां न हि कश्चित् व्यपाश्रयाः. Translation: persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested in the so called happiness or so called distress of this world.
So, why is it that devotees do not experience the duality? So, the key that is given over here is that it does not affect them. Right? So, it's not that the devotees are not subject to happiness and distress. So, they are in the material world, and the nature of the material world is this duality. So, it's not that they're not subject to happiness and distress, but by the force of Gyan and Vairagya, they are they are unaffected by it. Right? So Gyan gives them this understanding that the happiness that they're experiencing today will be gone tomorrow. And Vairagya will give them the detachment when they are suffering. So by a combination of these two, they're equipoised under both situations. And also if you notice this verse, it is quite similar to the verse that appears in 127 Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yad Ahitukam. Okay, next verse.
1 second, Raj. 32. नाहं विरिञ्चो न कुमार नारदौ न ब्रह्मपुत्र मन मुनया सुरेशाः वेदामायस्येहितम् अंश कांशक न तत्स्वरूपं पृथगीशमानिना. Translation. Neither I, Lord Shiva, nor Brahma, nor the Ashwini Kumaras, nor Narada, or the other great sages who are Brahma's sons, nor even the demigods can understand the pastimes and personality of the Supreme Lord. Although we are part of the Supreme Lord, we consider ourselves independent, separate controllers, and thus we cannot understand his identity.
So, this verse does not mean that great personalities like Shiva, Brahma, Ashwini Kumaras, Narad have the fault of considering themselves independent of the Lord. So, rather, Lord Shiva is employing the Kimuta Nyaya, where he is saying that even such exalted personalities will fail to understand the Lord unless they surrender to the Lord. Because these are some of the most exalted personalities. But he's saying that unless they surrender to the Lord, they will be unable to understand the Lord. Which means that one can only understand the Lord after receiving the mercy of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible. Right, so, Srila Prabhupada quotes the Brahma Samhita Advaitam Achyutamana Adimananta Rupam. Then he says, Vedesha Durlabham, Durlabham Atma Bhakto. Right, very difficult to understand from the Vedas, but Adurlabham Atma Bhakto, but easily understood by the devotees. Next verse.
नहि अस्य नहि अस्यस्ति प्रियः कश्चिन् न प्रिया स्वः परोऽपि वा आत्मत्वत् सर्वभूतानां सर्वभूता प्रियो हरि. Translation. He holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. Thus, he is auspicious friend of all living beings and is very near and dear to all of them.
So this verse has an apparent contradiction, right? The first two lines say that no one is dear to him, no one is inimical, no one is his own relative, no one is alien. And then in the last two lines, he says that he is the auspicious friends of all living entity and is very near and dear to all of them. right? So the first two lines are talking about the Lord's neutrality, that he is the same to everyone. So Lord Shiva uses the phrase na priya twice to emphasize that no one is dear to the Lord. Then he says that Atavad Sarva Bhutana, that he is the auspicious friend of everyone. And in the last line, he says, Sarva Bhuta Priyo Hari, that the Lord is dear to everyone. Right? So this is resolved as follows, that everyone is equally dear to the Lord. No one is more or less dear to him. But then why does it appear to the jiva that the Lord is sometimes favoring and sometimes condemning? So Prabhupada says that relationship of dearness or enmity between the Supreme Lord and the living beings are due to the intervention of the illusory energy. Because of the three modes of material nature intervene between the Lord and the living entities, these different relationships appear. Actually, the living entity in his pure condition is always very near and dear to the Lord. And the Lord is dear to him. There is no question of partiality or envy. Right? So this verse is very similar to the verse that appears in the ninth chapter, Samom Sarvbhuteshu Name Dveshasti Na Priya Ye Bhajante Ye Bhajante Tamam Bhakti Mai Tuteshu Chapya. Right. The first two lines says that I am the same to everyone. In the second two line it says, but to my devotees I am very, very dear. So same point is made here. The first two lines speaks about those who are not in a devotional relationship, right? So he says that for those who are not my devotees, they are not dear to me. I'm not inimical to them. They're just enjoying and suffering as per the rules of karma. But then Atmamata Sarvabhuta Nam Sarvabhuta Priya Hari, right? That for the jivas who turn to me, I am dear to them and they are dear to me. Okay, next two verses.
तस्य चायं महाभागाश्चित्रकेतुः प्रियानुगाः सर्वत्र समदृक्शान्तो हि अहं च एव अच्युतप्रियाः तस्मान्न विस्मयाः कार्याः पुरुषेषु महात्मसु महापुरुषा भक्तेषु शान्तेषु समदर्शिषु. Translation: the magnanimous Chitraketu is a dear devotee of the Lord. He is equal to all living entities and is free from attachment and hatred. Similarly, I am also very dear to Lord Narayan. Therefore, no one should be astonished to see the activities of the most exalted devotees of Narayan, for they are free from attachment and envy. They are always peaceful and they are equal to everyone.
So now Lord Shiva is specifically talking about Chitraketu. Like earlier he was talking generally about the nature of devotees. So he is now applying this principle to Chitraketu. He says the magnanimous Chitraketu is a dear devotee of the Lord. So even though by his nature, the Lord is equal, but because Chitraketu is a devotee, the the nature of the Lord is that he becomes favorable to him. So Parvati Devi might say, how do you know this? And Lord Shiva says, I experienced that myself. I am also a devotee. I am also dear to the Lord. And because we are both connected in this way, Chitraketu and I, we are both connected in this way that we are both devotees of the Lord. We both have the mercy of the Lord. We both are equal to any dualities. So we have internal friendship. So the point Lord Shiva is making is that the harsh words that were uttered by Chitraketu in no way disturbed him. Why? Because they were coming from a devotee, and he says that they were actually nourishing the particular rasa of our of our sakya or our friendship. Right? So Vishnu Chakravarti says that indirectly Lord Shiva is uh, is saying that you are unnecessarily becoming angry. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he plays out a possible uh, uh, response by Lord Shiva to Chitraketu. Now, Chitraketu in the earlier part of the chapter had made all that accusation at Lord Shiva. They see how shamelessly he is sitting with his wife in the presence of exalted people. So in verse 7, he had made the point. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that Lord Shiva would probably have responded to it as follows. He would say that, O Chitraketu, this is how I am. You show yourself to be detached through pure bhakti, but you enjoy with women with Vidyadharis in private places. You are deceptive. I also show myself to be controlled by women and also act deceptively. But whereas you show bhakti and hide your material enjoyment, I show material and hide my bhakti. Let this assembly witness our inner friendship. So he's saying in this way, Chakravarti Pad says that in this way, Chitraketu and Lord Shiva would have exchanged teasing words with each other. But Lord Shiva is now saying that, O Parvati, if you had not interrupted us by your angry words and bad taste, he would not have been cursed. So Parvati Devi says in astonishment that you are the Lord. You are the greatest of the devotees from beginningless time. How come you have such love for this immature, fallen Kshatriya who now ascends to the path of bhakti? So, to this, Lord Shiva responds, no, no, no one should be astonished to see the activities of the exalted devotees of Narayan who are peaceful and equal to everyone. Right? So Chakravarti Path is bringing about this undercurrent that they were both friends. Amongst friends, joking is okay, and more than friends, they are both devotees. So friendly exchanges between devotees is permissible. And even though there was a difference in the material status, Lord Shiva was Mahadeva and Chitraketu was just the leader of the Vidyadharas. But nevertheless, they were united by both being exalted devotees. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that Vaishnava Kriya Mudra Vigehena Bhujaya. Very difficult to understand the activities of Vaishnavas. So later Srila Prabhupada comments on the how there is difference between male and female understandings. He says that here is a difference between male and female that exists even in higher statuses of life. In fact, even between Lord Shiva and his wife. Lord Shiva could understand Chitraketu very nicely, but Parvati could not. Even in higher status of life, there is a difference between understanding of a male and female. It may be clearly said that the understanding of a male is always inferior to the understanding of a man. In Western countries, there is now agitation to the effect that man and woman should be considered equal. But from this verse, it appears that the woman is always less intelligent than man. Okay, next verse.
Yes, Prabhuji. श्रीशुक उवाच इति श्रुत्वा भगवतः शिवस्या उमा अभिभाषितम् बहुवा शान्तधीराजन् देवी विगतविस्मया. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, after hearing this speech by her husband, the demigoddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva, gave up her astonishment at the behavior of King Chitraketu and became steady in intelligence.
So Chakravarti Path says that when Parvati remembered her former behavior in cursing Chitraketu, she became very much ashamed and covered her face with the skirt of her sari, admitting that she was wrong in cursing Chitraketu. Okay, next verse.
Uh, इति भागवतो देव्याः प्रति प्रतिशाप्तुम् अलन्तमाः मूर्धना सा जागृहे शापम् एतवत् साधुलक्षणम्. Translation: The great devotee Chitraketu was so powerful that he was quite competent to curse Mother Parvati in retaliation. But instead of doing so, he very humbly accepted the curse and bowed his head before Lord Shiva and his wife. This is very much to be appreciated as the standard behavior of a Vaishnava.
So if somebody is chastising you, and if you do not have the ability to retaliate, then to keep quiet is natural. But if you have the ability to retaliate and you still keep quiet, that is a sign of greatness. So in the fourth canto in the Daksha pastime, we see that with the exception of Lord Shiva, everyone who had the ability to retaliate was retaliating. Nandi was cursing, Daksha was cursing, Bhrigu was cursing, Lord Shiva went simply walked away. Right? Now Lord Shiva was the most powerful personality there. Right? And he was the one who was most insulted. But he simply he simply refrained from reacting. Same thing is similar thing is being glorified over here. That Chitraketu could have counter cursed Mother Parvati. Right. Prabhupada says that this is called sadhu lakshanam, the characteristic of a sadhu or a devotee. And then he quotes Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Saishana. That because Chitraketu was a devotee, he was naturally humble. Because he was a devotee, he was not too much agitated by the material duality that resulted as a result of the curse. So he calmly accepted the curse of Parvati Devi, even though he could have counter cursed. Okay, next verse.
जज्ञे दक्षिणाग्नौ दानवीं योनिम् आश्रिताः वृत्रा इच्छि अभिविक् अभिविक् अभिविख्याताः ज्ञानविज्ञान ज्ञानविज्ञानसंयुताः. Being cursed by Mother Durga, Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, that same Chitraketu accepted birth in a demoniac species of life. Although still fully equipped with transcendental knowledge and practical application of that knowledge in life, he appeared as a demon at the fire sacrifice performed by Tvashta, and thus he became famously as Vrutrasura.
So this verse kind of closes the loop. If you remember, the Chitraketu pastime began with Rasur, right? And then there was this question by Parikshit Maharaj that how did Vritrasur have such advanced transcendental knowledge? And because of in response to that question, Sukdev Goswami started relating the pastime of Chitraketu all the way till he is cursed and takes birth as as Vritrasur. Prabhupada notes over here that he's a Jati Smarana, in the sense that either he gives up the body of Chitraketu and takes the body of a demon, he remembers his past life, right? Then Prabhupada quotes Bhagavatam 1.5.17 that one who is advanced in devotional service, the spiritual assets are never lost. So one of the assets was the memory. So he remembered who he was, and that is why he was speaking such exalted philosophy to Indra. Next verse.
Yes, Prabhu. एतत्ते सर्वमाख्याताम् यन्मां त्वं परिपृच्छसि वृत्रासुरा जातेश्च कारणं भगवन्मते. My dear King Parikshit, you inquired from me how Vrutrasura, a great devotee, took birth in a demoniac family. Thus, I have tried to explain to you everything about this.
So this is concluding the narration, and Sukdev Goswami in the next two verses will give the first stuti of listening to the pastime of Chitraketu. Okay, next verse.
इ- इतिहासम् इमं पुण्यं चित्रकेतोर्महात्मनाः महत्म्यां विष्णुभक्तानां श्रुत्वा बन्धात् विमुच्यते. Translation: Chitraketu was a great devotee, Mahatma. If one hears this history of Chitraketu from a pure devotee, the listener also is freed from the conditional life of material existence.
So this is the first stuti, that if one listens to the history of Chitraketu from a pure devotee, right? So we have the benefit of listening to it from Srila Prabhupada. So we also have access to this mercy. Prabhupada in the purport also talks about the dangers of listening of Bhagavatam from professional reciters, right? So he says that these pastimes, like the history of Chitraketu, are sometimes misunderstood by outsiders and non-devotees. Therefore, Sukdev Goswami advised that the history of Chitraketu be heard from a devotee. And then he says that Mahaprabhu's secretary also advised that one learn the history of Bhagavatam from a from a devotee. And then later on, he quotes Sanatana Goswami that one should not hear anything about Krishna from a non-Vaishnava. Milk touched by the lips of a serpent had poisonous effect. Similarly, talks about Krishna given by a non-Vaishnava are also poisonous. One must be a bona fide devotee, and then he must preach and impress devotional service upon his listeners. Okay, next verse, last verse.
ये तत्प्रातरुत्थाय श्रद्धाया वक् यतः पतेत् इ- इतिहासं हरिं स्मृत्वा स याति परमां गतिम्. Translation: One who rises from bed early in the morning and recites this history of Chitraketu, controlling his words and mind and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will return home back to Godhead without difficulty.
So this concludes the pastime of Chitraketu. So the word Chitraketu is composed of two parts. So Chitra, Chitra literally means picture, also means bright, extraordinary, marvelous, multifaceted. Ketu means a flag or a banner. So Chitraketu literally means he whose banner is wondrous, or one who is marked by by distinction. So this fits the character of Maharaj Chitraketu in in Bhagavatam. Another way of looking at Chitraketu is that we see an extraordinary change in the banners of Chitraketu. Right? So one of the meanings of Chitra is variegated, and Ketu means banner or emblem. So we see a lot of variegatedness in Chitraketu. Right? So he began being a materially attached king who was obsessed with having a son. Then we see that he becomes a devotee of Lord Narada. Then, by chanting the stotra, he becomes a pure devotee of Lord Sankarsana. Then he becomes an exalted Vidyadhara. Then he offends Lord Shiva. Then he appears as the Asura Vritrasur. Then, appearing as the Asura Vritrasur, he preaches Shuddha Bhakti. And then finally, he goes back to Godhead. Right? So, this is a pastime that is filled with a lot of twists and variegatedness. So, another meaning of Chitraketu. So, with this, we end the 17th chapter. I'll pause and see if you have any comments or discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for the beautiful class. I'm just curious, Prabhuji. In the beginning of the class, you mentioned about Swami Prabodhananda Saraswati. Uh, so generally, he doesn't seem like I never heard. He seems like not an ISKCON devotee or like Vaishnava Parampara. So any insight about him? Just I'm curious. I just
No, he's not ISKCON devotee. He's part of Chaitanya Leela. He's the brother-in-law of Prakashananda Saraswati. Very, very exalted personality.
sorry, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Prabhu, isn't he uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami?
Is he the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami?
Prabodhananda Saraswati, yeah.
Who's the brother-in-law of Prakashananda Saraswati? So Prakashananda Saraswati was the Mayavadi sannyasi, right?
Yes, the brother-in-law that we're talking about.
To do something with Jiva Goswami, the brother-in-law. Uh,
No, I mean the devotee who was in Puri, right? He used to be Mayavad, and then Mahaprabhu spoke about the 4 verses. His brother-in-law is a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. Let me get the name.
One is
Sarvabhauma
Gopinath.
Bhattacharya's brother-in-law is in Lord Chaitanya's Leela.
Gopinath.
Correct. Prabodhananda Saraswati, if I remember, is Gopal Bhatta Goswami's uncle.
I see. So Gopal Bhatt. Okay. Okay. But he's a personality in Chaitanya Leela. Right?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if we have no more questions, we'll move on to the next chapter.
Yeah, Prabhu, just wanted to say this pastime is a very profound and very deep, especially for committing Vaishnava parad or talking or thinking about somebody or concluding or judging. I think it's a very important lesson for us devotees so that we don't do this type of thing also. Because it's sometimes very easy to judge and think about somebody that way, this way.
True. Many very valuable lessons. But you're right. This is one of the most valuable. Vaishnavachar.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, how do we reconcile? Yeah, go ahead.
No, summary that Prabhu gave, the many twists and turns in Chitraketu's life. You know how he was an obsessed king, a devotee, a Vidyadhara, offends Lord Shiva, and uh, in the form of a demon devotional service. So I was just thinking, we can never know, and as well as yeah. So that was my point of appreciation.
Yeah, so always err on the side of caution.
Also, the partial, I have two questions, Prabhu, that way then. The partiality where in the one of the verse we had an understanding of a woman is always inferior to the understanding of a man, even in the higher stages of life, right? Like they are very elevated. Is this not like a very critical and challenging question?
So if you think this is critical and challenging, wait till the purports in the next two chapters, where which I'm not going to go into, but the next two chapters is Diti getting the getting the mercy of Kashyap Muni to kill Indra, and I don't know if Ashana you have read the purports. But Prabhupada's purport, they are heavy, but those purports are exceptionally heavy.
I think I'll have a hard time then.
So they come in the general category, Prabhu, that Prabhupada has never held back. I was here listening to an interview of Prabhupada by a journalist, by a woman journalist, and she was asking very similar question. How can you say that women are less intelligent? How can you say that they always need to be controlled and guided, etc. The thing is that Prabhupada speaks from the scriptures, and as far as the scriptures are concerned, when uh, as long as there is the, like Prabhupada said, right? So once a lady devotee went to Prabhupada and asked him that do you consider women to be inferior? And then Prabhupada said, if you consider yourself to be a woman, then yes, you are inferior. Right? So that was a way of saying that as long as you associate with the body, you identify with the body, then the distinction between male and female is there. And in the material world, the distinction naturally in this way that there are areas of strength and weaknesses in both genders, and Prabhupada calls them out. As far as pure devotees are concerned, there is no distinction between the two. I was listening to a podcast where it was a slightly interesting podcast on the anyway, this is being recorded. So there are uh, different ways that all this is being handled now. When the level of sensitivity is I guess different. It was always a sensitive topic, but um, but you will see that whatever Prabhupada speaks, he speaks from the scriptures. So he says that you can't blame me, blame the scriptures. Yeah, so what can you say beyond that?
There's another impartiality as well. Like one of the verses where Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu, where Lord is showing special favor uh, and protection for his devotees. So does this special favor is shown only for the spirituality principle where they have any devotee showing more love, surrender activities?
Yes, Prabhu, that is correct. So it's basically, in Bhagavad Gita 4:11, Krishna says like that, as one approaches to me, I reciprocate. So one who approaches to me in neutrality, I will reciprocate by neutrality. And one who approaches to me with love, I reciprocate with love. So it's not a violation of Krishna's claim of being impartial. It's kind of like the opposite would be unnatural, right? That if somebody is loving Krishna, and then Krishna says that I treat you the same as somebody who has no regard for me, that would be unnatural. Relationships don't exist like that, right? That is why Krishna openly goes and advertises himself that I'm neutral to those who are neutral to me, and those who are inclined towards me, I'm inclined towards them.
Prabhu, just to add on what you were saying about Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada was very open to women. He gave them Brahmin initiation and also let them to do deity worship. Here in the US or Western country, for example, if even now in Vrindavan, there's no Mataji is doing arti or sing in arti or do deity worship, openly. But in the US, he allowed them and gave them Brahmin initiation as well. I mean, he said something, but on the other hand, he put also Mataji on a very high level also.
True. Absolutely correct.
Just a few thoughts, Prabhuji, on the whole Chitraketu pastime. Like a couple of appreciations is the respect and like love for Lord Shiva is actually increased when we hear through devotees. Because many times, like few times when I heard like why only Krishna God, at least in the initial times, like other people saying, but and they say that okay, the Lord Shiva is only devotee of like that kind of, but whether it is Daksha's pastime or even Chitraketu's pastime, it is very clearly uh, described, and Lord Shiva is glorified. At the same time, the position of Lord Narayan or Krishna is very clearly established. So like both the things are like I felt so amazing. uh, so I
That's
that's why like you are saying like one should hear from devotees to understand. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. You're right. Okay, so let's move on to sixth canto, chapter 18. Diti vows to kill Indra. Right, so this is a long chapter, 78 verses. The first 19 verses are mostly genealogicals there. So Ramkatha Prabhu, read the first verse and translation,
Prabhuji.
and then after that, until the 19th verse, just read the translation.
Sure, Prabhuji. Sure. Thank you. Can I read now, Prabhuji?
Sorry?
Can I read now? First one?
Yes, that's why I'm asking you to start.
Yeah. Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. श्रीशुक उवाच पृश्निस्तु पत्नीसवितुः सावित्रीं व्यहृतं त्रयीम् अग्निहोत्रं पशुं सोमं चातुर्मास्यं महामखान्. Translation. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Prushni, who was the wife of Savita, the fifth of the 12 sons of Aditi, gave birth to three daughters, Savitri, Vyahriti, and Trayi, and the sons named Agnihotra, Pashu, Soma, Chaturmasya, and the five Mahayajnas.
So the first 19 verses is going to be talking about the further descendants of the daughter of Daksha. And this chapter as a whole is going to be describing how Diti, the wife of Kashyap Muni, whose son had been killed by Vishnu, she performs austerities to kill Indra. Right? So she is so let's take a little bit of step back, that why suddenly after speaking Chitraketu's pastime, Sukdev Goswami begins to talk about the descendants of Daksha. So at the end of the fifth canto, on hearing the description of the hellish planets, Maharaj Parikshit asks, how can one be saved from them? Right. So then in the three chapters, in the beginning of the sixth canto, Sukdev Goswami gives the pastime of Ajmer. Right. Then uh, so I'm trying to connect it with how uh, the descendants of Daksha was there. So at the end of the fourth canto, it was the descendants of Daksha were explained to the point of the prachetas. Right? If you remember, the fourth canto ends with with the with the prachetas. Now here it is once again taken up in the fourth and the fifth chapter. So in the fifth chapter, it is also mentioned how Narad Muni converted all the sons of Daksha to devotees on the instructions of and and then on the instructions of Brahma, Daksha had 60 daughters who were given to various personalities in the universe. So this is described in the sixth chapter. Then Kashyap Muni marries the 17 daughters of Daksha, and through them, the various species of living entities are born. So the eldest daughter is Aditi, who is the mother of the 12 Adityas. Then of the sons, the fourth Aditya is Twasta. And then he marries Rachna, who is from the dynasty of the demons. One of the sons of Twasta was Vishwarup, who was killed by Indra. Now, to avenge the death of Twasta and avenge the death of Vishwarup, Twasta created the demon Vritrasur. And then the pastime of Chitraketu is there. So essentially, Sukdev Goswami was going down the descendants of Prajapati Daksha when he spoke about when he spoke about Vritrasur. And then Parishit Maharaj stopped him at that point and asked him more about Vritrasur. So then he took the detour, and all this whole discussion about the 11 chapters of Maharaj Chitraketu were spoken. Right. But now that that question has been answered, Sukdev Goswami is back to the original flow, which is describing the descendants of Daksha. So this is what he will do in the next 19 verses. Okay. Now you can just Prabhu, you can just read the translations.
O King Siddhi, who was the wife O King Siddhi, who was the wife of Bhaga, the sixth son of Aditi, bore three sons named Mahima, Vibhu, and Prabhu. And one is extremely beautiful daughter whose name was Asi.
Continue, please.
Yes, Prabhu. Data, the seventh son of Aditi, had four wives named Kuhu, Sini, Sinivali, Raka, and Anumati. These wives begot four sons named Sayam, Darsha, Pratah, and Purnamasa, respectively. The wife of Vedata, the eighth son of Aditi, was named Kriya. In her, Vedata begot the five fire gods named the Purishyas. The wife of Varuna, The ninth son of Aditi was named Charshani. Bhrigu, the son of Brahma, took birth again in her womb.
So the name of the 12 sons of Aditi are called Adityas. So this is in order of their seniority. So the oldest is Vivaswan, then Arima, then Pusha. Pusha, if you remember, was his teeth were knocked out when he was smiling at the at the sacrifice of Prajapati Daksha. So there is Vivashwan, Arima, Pusha, Twasta, Savita, Bhaga. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Pusha, it was Bhaga whose teeth were knocked out. Then Dhata, Vidhata, Varun, Mitra, Indra, and the youngest is Vamandev. So this is given in 6639. And there are there is brief mention over here which can be expanded into past time, which I won't go into. That how did Bhrigu take birth again as the son of Varun? How did Agastya Rishi appear? How did Vashishta appear? So, firstly, you probably know all of them, and secondly, it'll take us a lot of time over here. So we'll just continue reading. Please go ahead.
By the semen of Varuna, the great mystic Valmiki took birth from an ant hill. Bhrigu and Valmiki were specific sons of Varuna, whereas Agastya and Vasishtha rishis were the common sons of Varuna and Mitra, the 10th son of Aditi.
Okay, next verse.
Upon seeing Urvasi, the celestial society girl, both Mitra and Varuna discharged semen, which they preserved in an earthen pot. The two sons, Agastya and Vasishtha, later appeared from that pot, and they are therefore the common sons of Mitra and Varuna. Mitra begot three sons in the womb of his wife, whose name was Ravati. Their names were Utsarga, Arshita, and Pippala. O O King Parikshit, Indra, the king of the heavenly planets and the 11th son of Aditi, begot three sons named Jayanta, Rishabha, and Midusha in the womb of his wife Ptolemy. Thus, we have heard. By his own potency, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has multifarious potencies, appeared in the form of dwarf as Urukrama, the 12th son of Aditi. In the womb of his wife, whose name is Kirti, he begot one son named Bruhatsloka, who had many sons headed by Saubhaga.
So this is Vamandev's appearance. Go ahead. Let's try and complete till verse 19, Prabhu. Go ahead.
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Later, in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I shall describe how Urukrama, Lord Vamanadev, appeared as the son of the great sage Kashyapa and how he covered the three worlds with three steps. I shall describe the uncommon activities he performed, his qualities, his power, and how he took birth from the womb of Aditi. Now let me describe the sons of Diti who were begotten by Kashyapa but who became demons. In this demoniac family, the great devotee Prahlad Maharaj appeared, and Bali Maharaj also appeared in that family. The demons are technically known as Daityas because they proceeded from the womb of Diti. First, the two sons named Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha took birth from Diti's womb. Both of them were very powerful and were worshipped by the Daityas and Danavas. The wife of Hiranyakashipu was known as Kayadu. She was the daughter of Jamba and a descendant of Danu. She gave birth to four consecutive sons known as Samhlada, Anuhlada, Hlada, and Prahlada. The sister of these four sons was known as Simhika. She married the demon named Viprachit and gave birth to another demon named Rahu.
So this is the same Simika that appears in Ramayana. She's later killed by Hanuman. Okay, let's continue.
While Rahu in disguise was drinking nectar among the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead severed his head. The wife of Simhlada was named Kriti. By union with Simhlada, Kriti gave birth to a son named Panchajana. The wife of Lada was named Damani. She gave birth to two sons named Vatapi and Ilvala. When Agastya Muni became Ilvala's guest, Ilvala served him a feast by cooking Vatapi, who was in the shape of a ram. The wife of Anuhlada was named Surya. She gave birth to two sons named Bhaskala and Mahisha. Prahlada had one son, Virochana, whose wife gave birth to Bali Maharaj. Thereafter, Bali Maharaj begot 100 sons in the womb of Ashana. Ashana. One of these 100 sons, King Bana, was the eldest. The activities of Bali Maharaj, which are very laudable, will be described later in the 8th canto. Since King Bana was a great worshipper of Lord Shiva, he became one of Lord Shiva's most celebrated associates. Even now, Lord Shiva protects King Bana's capital and always stands beside him. Verse 19. The 49 Marut demigods were also born from the womb of Diti. None of them had sons. Although they were born of Diti, King Indra gave them a position as demigods.
Okay, so this is where another detour comes in, where Parishad Maharaj will now ask that how is it possible that the Daityas who are generally inimical to the Devas actually got a position of the Devas. So this then the whole pastime of the 49 Maruts are over here. Okay, so we'll stop over here. Any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। थाय गौर प्रेमानंद।